Bitcoin plus time equals wealth. In this video, I'm going to tell you all about how buying Bitcoin and holding it and giving it time to work its magic is going to benefit you and create wealth for you. Bitcoin, first of all, like most sound investments, has a handful of days each year where most of the growth is taking place. So you need to be holding Bitcoin or any other asset for that matter that's a good, sound, long-term investment for a long period of time so you can gather up and collect the growth that occurs over these days. Now, you also have some dips on those during those time too, but as history has proven, the growth outweighs the drops. If you look at any chart for any stock, bond, index fund, whatever it is that you trade, the prices of real estate, you will see over time jagged lines, right, that mark the ups and downs of that market. Bitcoin's the same, but if you will buy Bitcoin and spend time holding Bitcoin at least 4 to 5 years, so you can see, because Bitcoin has a cyclical nature, of every 4 or 5 years, it goes through a fairly similar process of growth and decline. But we're ending up at the end of that period with significant growth. So you want to give yourself time holding Bitcoin to witness this. And then as you see that, as you get through the first cycle, you'll understand why I recommend people hold it for 20 years, because then it really has a chance to do its magic. And over that time period, it will do a lot of weird things. It'll do a lot of wonderful things. It'll do a lot of scary things, but over time it is going to build wealth for you. So you want to have that time in the market. There's a saying in market there's a saying in investing that says time in the market always beats timing the market. Timing the market is when you're trying to get in and out and take profits, when you're thinking short term or mid-term and you have targets or whatnot. And it has been shown time and time again that over time, people just cannot consistently time the market and make profit. They would be better investing in an index fund or a group of a certain type of asset and holding it for long term. It's almost always shown that they will get better results. People do beat the market on the short term, but not over the long term. When you're talking about 10 years or more, it all averages out. You can ask Warren Buffett about this and other significant and successful investors like him. They will tell you the same thing. They've had their successes, but over time, they are about as even as the market, even though over short periods of time, they will beat the market. Which brings me to another point to this, that time in the market beats timing the market. There are a lot of extremely successful investors that have used long time in the market to build massive wealth. And we're talking about people like John Templeton, Warren Buffett, who I already mentioned, Jack Bogle, Benjamin Graham, Stanley Druckenmiller. These are men who are at the top of almost anyone's list on the greatest investors of all time. And they preached and practiced time in the market. They were not trying to time the market. They were not trying to flip things. They were buying good, sound assets like Bitcoin and holding it for long periods of time so that they could get the maximum wealth growth out of it. So finally, I want to give you one more point, something unique to Bitcoin actually. Bitcoin is the first digital asset that is truly supply and demand driven. And what do I mean when I say that? I mean that there is a very small amount of Bitcoin that will ever be made. All right. And almost 95% of this Bitcoin has already been made. So over the next 10 years, another 4% will be made. And then over the following 100 years, the last 1% will be made. It is a very scarce and limited asset. There is not very much of it. All right. So the supply is very small. We're also in a point in history where the people companies, governments, whoever could use, like people who use money, dollars, euros, yen, the amount of those things are used almost universally. Almost 100% of people that live in the United States use dollars, right? But right now, worldwide, maybe 1% of people use Bitcoin. And so demand for Bitcoin is really as small as it's ever going to be going forward. So when you marry that tiny supply with the tiny demand now that will only grow, and when that demand grows and people are competing for that tiny supply, you are going to see explosive growth in Bitcoin. So benefit you greatly to get into it right now. And really, it's not just people who are going to use Bitcoin. There's going to be very wealthy people who are going to buy a lot of Bitcoin. They're going to gobble up that limited supply. There's going to be a lot of countries, governments, cities, counties, states that will buy Bitcoin and hold it for their needs. There are also going to be a lot of things like AI that are going to be like automated electronic businesses that are going to demand and use Bitcoin. And that is going to also chew or eat into that limited supply and cause the price of Bitcoin, increase the demand for it and cause the price of Bitcoin to grow up. So these are three really big reasons that you need to get some Bitcoin now. Even a small amount. I talk about in some of my videos a system that I use called HODL 520, teaching people to buy their first $500 of Bitcoin and hold it for 20 years so they can start to see this growth, which they're going to see over the first 4 or 5 years that they hold it. And then they can start to put more on it if they're iffy, but I think you're going to want to put a lot more into it as you grow. But you can start small and start learning about it and seeing the benefits for yourself with a small amount of money that is not going to hurt you if everything I've said is wrong or if things go a completely different way, which is always possible. But when people start to see the value of Bitcoin, the demand for it is going to increase massively. So I want to get as many people involved now, especially small, middle class, everyday people. There's people that are very poor actually that are starting to use it all over the world because it's the first form of fair money they've ever had access to. So I really want to spread the word and get as many people involved in this as possible, as many ordinary everyday people, because the wealthiest people, the biggest countries, they are all going to start to see the value of it and get into it, increase the demand dramatically for Bitcoin. And before that happens, I want to see you and everyday people like us get their hands on some Bitcoin and start to reap the benefits for it. So again, there you go. Bitcoin plus time equals wealth. Remember that time and most gains occur on a handful of days for any asset that you invest in. So you want to be in the market to take advantage of those. Time in the market always beats timing the market, and the greats of investing have all proven that out. And then finally, remembering that Bitcoin is the first truly supply and demand driven digital asset. There's really not been anything like it before. It's a truly open and free market, and there is a completely limited finite supply of it, and demand could be infinite at some point in time. So balancing the small supply with a massive demand that is going to occur, especially when we're in the early days of it, where very little demand is relatively occurring right now. This is a great time to buy Bitcoin, get in to hold it and get into that market and see how Bitcoin plus time will produce wealth for you.